We're moving on from the world of prepositional phrases to start looking at specific sentence structure. And so we start by taking notes this week on 4 sentence patterns that we're going to look at. And we're going to still use our knowledge of prepositional phrases to help us eliminate lots of words in the sentences so that we can find these sentence patterns. So students have a notes sheet where they copied down these 4 sentence patterns and these 4 complements. And so as we talked about complements, we compared it to compliment with an I, as in telling your mother she looks pretty today so that you can get money to go to the movies. This compliment has an E, and so it's a different meaning, and it has to do with words that complete the thought or the meaning of a verb. And we have 4 of them: direct objects, indirect objects, predicate adjectives, and predicate noun. And then I also put the word nominative here. We're not going to really refer to them that way, but as they get into higher level grammar in the next couple of years, a predicate noun and a nominative are the same thing. And so we're going to break our screencast and our learning into a couple of different sections as we learn about our complements and how they fit into our sentence patterns. So the first complement we're going to look at goes with action verbs. And I had students memorize their linking verbs for a quiz already this year on Monday. And so if it's not a linking verb, if it's not one of the 18 verbs that they had to memorize for that test, then it's going to be an action verb. And so we're going to go through a process, and students will do this multiple times in class and will probably get sick of hearing me say the same things over and over. But what I try to do is a pattern so that they can start saying the same things when they are working through problems on their own. And so the first thing we do when we get to a sentence is we try to figure out anything that we can get rid of, like prepositional phrases and infinitives. So if we look at this sentence, movie producers often borrow real homes to film. We look for anything we can get rid of. And I see 2 here. And so I need to decide, is to being used as a preposition? Is it talking about a noun at the end? Or is it talking with a verb, to film? And since it's a verb, we're going to use brackets to show that this is an infinitive. And now we don't have to look at that part of the sentence anymore. We're going to ignore it. And think about what's the subject of what's left. Movie producers often borrow real homes. What is the sentence talking about? The sentence is talking about producers. And what do the producers do? The producers often, that doesn't make sense. You can't often. The producers borrow. And I can think that that's an action that I could do. I could borrow something from somebody. And I also think that it's not one of the 18 linking verbs that we had to memorize. So now we take another step here. And now that we've found an action verb, I know that the next complement I need to look for is a direct object. And so students should have this information highlighted on their notes, the important information here. And that is to find a direct object, we ask our questions, whom or what. So movie producers borrow. Whom or what do they borrow? They borrow homes. And if I can answer that question, whom or what, then I found my direct object. And we talked about the purpose that these other words that aren't labeled have, and they are modifiers. Real describes homes. Movie describes what kind of producers. Often describes when they borrow. So every word in the sentence has a job. The ones we're going to really focus in on, though, are the subject, the verb, and then the complement. So the next sentence says, the right house can charm viewers. What's the sentence talking about? That's our subject. House. What is the house doing? It charms, and it actually has a helping verb, which we haven't talked about yet, but we will. And together, they serve as an action verb. The house can charm whom or what? The house can charm the viewers. And since I answered that question, I have a direct object. And now we've got a longer sentence. So again, we're going to go back to our process. We start by finding any prepositional phrases. And I see with condensed milk. And that looks like it's it. So now I'm going to go back to my sentence and look for my subject. Who is the sentence about? It's about she. What did she do? There's my verb. She heated. And since it's an action verb, I'm going to ask my question, whom or what? She heated what? She heated lima beans. And she heated ham. So I have two direct objects because there are two things that she heated. Now we still have a lot of other words in this sentence, and I notice that I've got another verb because it's a compound verb. She heated, and she also made, which is an action verb. So I could ask the question, made what? She made cocoa. So I have another direct object that goes with another action verb. And it looks like I'm going to have a third verb. She heated, she made, and she set. And since I have an action verb, I'm going to go back to my question. She set what? She set the table. So we don't have to limit ourselves to just one action verb, one subject. We can have multiple subjects and verbs and complements. So then we did some more practice with this, and I had the students come to the board and practice this. So I'm just going to do a couple of these sentences, but as guidance. And for extra practice, students can always print these sheets off and practice them on their own. And these sentences came out of the Greek Gods book that we're reading. So the first step we're going to look at is what is the prepositional phrase, if there is one, and I see one, by one. And next I will look for my subject. Who or what is the sentence talking about? It's talking about he. And just so nobody thinks that we're crazy, we were referring to Cronus, the god Cronus, who swallowed his children in the creation of the Olympian gods. So he is our subject. What did he do? He swallowed. That's an action verb. So I go back to my question. To find a direct object, I have two questions. Whom or what? He swallowed. Whom or what did he swallow? He swallowed children. Kind of freaky to think about this, but we also have a modifier here. His describes children. And we've been talking about these phrases at the beginnings of sentences that are set off with commas. Authors will use those. We call them transitions. And this one is actually an adverb with a prepositional phrase. And students are starting to do some writing in which we'll be asking them to put transitions into their sentences. All right, the next sentence. He angered her by his infidelities. We look for a prepositional phrase, by. So the phrase is by his infidelities. Look for the subject. The sentence is about he. What did he do? He angered. So that's an action verb. He angered whom or what? He angered her. Okay, the next sentence. She persuaded the other gods into a plot against him. Prepositional phrases, into. So into a plot is one. And then I see another one, against. So this one had two prepositional phrases, against him. And again, the advantage of doing this is that we can get rid of those sentences as we look for our subject and verbs. And I see an adverb at the beginning, which we can ignore. So I'm left with she persuaded the other gods. Who is the sentence about? It's about she. What did she do? She persuaded. Since it's an action verb, I'm looking for a do. She persuaded whom or what? She persuaded the gods. And these other words are modifiers. Which gods? Other gods. The gods. So they're describing. The last one. Finally, she took, not the last one. Finally, she took a box from the table. Prepositional phrases, from the table. And I see that I've got a transition here at the beginning that's an adverb. Finally. So I can ignore that, and I'm left with she took the box. Who is the sentence about? It's about she. What did she do? She took. That's an action verb. What did she take? She took what? She took a box. And so there's my direct object. And the only word I have left there is the, which is a modifier. It's describing which box? The box. And the last sentence. She took a little golden key from her tunic. Prepositional phrases from her tunic. So now we're going to ignore that and look for our subject. She took a little golden key. She is the subject. What did she do? She took. It's an action verb, so I ask my question. She took whom or what did she take? She took a key. So there's my direct object. And I've got lots of modifiers here. What kind of key? A golden key. A little key. Which key? A key. And so this is how you find a direct object.